Good morning. I am making this video in preparation for a presentation in front of the zoning board. I'm just kind of collecting my thoughts, and also I'm sharing some ideas with you. I know that we're all hyper focused on national and state politics. I get that. But things that happen at the local level, that would be like county or city or village level, have deep and long lasting impacts on the way that we live our life, or the quality of our life. And I'm going to give you an example right now. This house was built here in the downtown area in 1952, according to property records, along with the home loan. This house was built with this building in the back. You might know this as a granny flat or a guest house. If you live in the United States, your zoning board probably calls this an accessory dwelling unit or an ADU. And to qualify as an ADU, the property needs to have four things need to be true. One thing, it needs to have a living and a sleeping space. It can be the same space. Another thing that it needs to have is a full bathroom. Another thing that needs to have is a kitchen. It can be a small sink, a mini refrigerator, and a 2-burner stove and no oven in many cases, and that will qualify as a full kitchen. And then lastly, it needs to have, as you can see, this one has this next feature. It needs to have an entrance which will enable the occupant to enter the unit without ever needing to access the main house. And so this one obviously has that because it's completely detached. It's not necessary for the unit to be completely detached. It can be semi-detached. It can be above a garage. Now, this was also an ADU of the previous home that sat next to it, which has now been knocked down for an office building. So there are myriad benefits of these ADUs, which have been popular in the United States since colonial times, all the way until about the mid-1950s, when they were banned across a lot of the United States. The first benefit is to the homeowner. Second is to the renter, person who will rent this. Third is to employers. And fourth is to culture. So I think the benefit to the homeowner is pretty obvious. According to our county property records, the person who initially moved into this house likely, not only did they collect rental income thanks to this ADU, but they likely lived in the ADU here and they rented out the main house. And I believe that there were a lot of people here in this area who were only able to get into the American dream of home ownership because of ADUs like this that they could rent out, because the home loan, the financial institution was able to count the expected income from the rental as income that they already had. The second benefit is to renters. So right now across the United States, most cities and small towns have the only option for rentals as apartment complexes. And we're seeing more and more amenities being added to this as those apartment complexes vie for people who have more money. And I know a lot of you meet that criteria, and you really enjoy having multiple swimming pools and a gym and walking trails and a playground and a dog park and a clubhouse and all of these things as amenities, and you use them. But I also know that some of you say you don't have time to use those things. I've met people who say that their pool is closed on weekends, or it closes at 5 p.m. just as they're getting out of work. All of those amenities add to the cost of a monthly rental for an apartment, not just because the apartment complex has to install them, so there's that initial cost, there's the maintenance cost, but there's also the insurance liability cost. Having a pool, a community pool, is a huge liability cost for insurance. Tennis courts, So while you may want those benefits, right now people don't have the option typically as renters. And we would see a lot more, we would see a cost coming down for renters if they had more options. You know, I mean, like this one, this one maybe had like a single dedicated parking space. There's not much to this. But if you're a young person, if you're solo or a young couple or something like that, this may be all that you need. You may not even need a parking space. You're not even 2 blocks from walking to downtown. If you work at the hospital, you're 1 block from the hospital. Okay, thirdly, there are benefits to employers. If you drive around just 2 towns north of here, actually 1 town north of here, which is Port St. Lucie, you'll see in their apartment complexes at night tons of Palm Beach Gardens police officer cars. And that's because those police officers don't have something affordable in their area. Meanwhile, 1 city north of that, which is Fort Pierce, they have signs advertising that Academy graduates from the police department earn $22 an hour. I don't know if you think that's a lot or a little, but I do know that that is not enough for, let's say, a man who is a police officer and has a stay-at-home wife with a new baby. That's not enough for them to even rent any apartment in any community in the entire county, because he wouldn't meet the requirement of earning 4 times the rent. And I checked the city website, and even tenured veteran agents in Fort Pierce Police Department stand to earn an average of $25 an hour. So that still would not be enough for a police officer to have a stay-at-home partner with children. Both parties absolutely do need to work. It is my opinion that people who protect and serve our neighborhoods should be able to afford to live in that same community. Now, the only reason that Palm Beach Gardens Police Department can source any new staff is that they have the ability to use taxpayer subsidied vehicles and gas credits, so that those officers can make the hour and a half each way daily commute to and from Palm Beach Gardens. I guess some people are willing to give up 15 hours every week to traffic. But what if they're not? And what if you're a small employer that doesn't have those kinds of resources? It is very challenging these days for employers to staff, for restaurants and bars to staff the wait staff. This ADU, because it's not legal to rent this out for residential, it has become a little bakery. It's the person who works here 100% of the time is the owner, because they cannot, just like so many businesses here, they cannot afford to pay what it would cost to recruit and retain somebody who lives here. All right, and then the last benefit is just going to be to culture. Humans have understood for thousands of years, they've understood that a neighborhood functions when you have all classes of society. You need a poor and working class, you need a middle class, and you do need an upper class. So the poor and working class, historically, these are the people who make things interesting. They make the art, they make the music. Comedy is inspired from working class people's situations. There's a reason that we have that trope of the starving artist. So you do need those people in a community. You also need some type of upper class, because those are the patrons of the arts, and those are the only people who have the time, the leisure time and the money to fuel the arts scene. And then you need the middle class, because the middle class acts as kind of like a moral compass to a society. When you lose a middle class, the things start to degrade. The middle class keeps everybody in check. This is something, like I said, people have understood this for thousands of years. You go and look around the great cities of Europe. They were not able to integrate by ethnicity, unfortunately. That's why you see a Jewish quarter, a Greek quarter, a Latin quarter. But by income, yes. And that's what made those areas not just artistically vibrant, because you had the artists who were the poor people, but you had the patrons of the arts who were able to fund great art, great architecture. It has been really difficult in this neighborhood, in this town, to convince people, for decades it's been difficult to convince them that affordable housing was a challenge, because it was not a challenge for the people who lived here. Over 80% of the people in this city own their own home. Over 50% of those people own their home with no mortgage. And the average age of residents here in the city is 50. So these people are doing well. And it's only been very, very recently when we have found small businesses complaining they're not able to find wait staff. The hospital is suffering, not able to find nurses. And particularly as this population ages, they're seeing they're not able to source home health aides. And so I'm excited to say that the local government has made the decision that they are going to revisit the ban on ADUs. This decision was made just last week. And this is the community that, if you had asked me, I would say this is the last place that would ever want affordable housing. They have fought it tooth and nail, just like they fought the Brightline station here. And I kind of understand where they're coming from in some ways, because they're looking at the American model of affordable housing, which is government subsidized apartment complexes that concentrate poverty. So one thing that we should have learned by now is that you cannot concentrate poverty. It doesn't work. You can't just cluster, force in like sardines in a tin can, a bunch of poor people. They need to be strategically interspersed into the middle class. And that is exactly what happens when you have like this is the original house, this is the ADU. That's exactly what happens when you have a local government that has controls over how many ADUs can be built on a street or on a block or in a neighborhood, and how many of those can be rented out. So the neighborhood can remain still being predominantly homeowners, people who have skin in the game, and a few of the people will be renters. And it will become a self-policing system. Because even in some of those so-called luxury apartment complexes, we see that sometimes people don't treat the neighborhood so great, or they don't treat the amenities so great, because they don't have skin in the game. They don't own these things. So the working class gets exposed to middle class ideas and norms, and their children just kind of seamlessly begin to fit in there. Well, I'm really excited about this for what happens next, because this meeting and how the city handles it is going to be watched by zoning boards all across the United States, because many cities and towns are struggling with how do we create affordable housing that our residents will accept, because a lot of people say that they don't want to live near affordable housing, which I get it. They don't want to live near government subsidized concentrated poverty housing is what they really mean, which makes absolute sense. the neighborhood will fall apart. But one or two renters in a middle class community will not deflate the property values. It will not cause crime. I'll try to give more updates on this. And again, I'm just really excited about this. This is a great step towards potential homeownership for a lot of people who thought they were priced out of ever being a homeowner. This is a great step forward for people who currently find their apartment rental to be unaffordable, and a great step forward for people who maybe live in something affordable but they have a really, really long commute. I hope you have a wonderful morning. Take care.